Everything you think you know about reality might be false. An elite scientist claims the universe doesn't exist without your consciousness. Stay until the end to understand why death is not the end. Everything you believe to be solid collapses once you realize that the world you see is not independent of you. There are no objects with their own existence, no particles waiting to be discovered. There are only potentialities, possibilities that activate when you observe them. Everything depends on your consciousness. You are not inside the universe. The universe is inside you. This isn't cheap spirituality or poetry disguised as science. It's quantum physics, biology, and decades of empirical research. Robert Lanza is no charlatan. He's one of the most respected scientists on the planet. And his statement is as brutal as it is revealing. Without the observer, there is no reality. The brain doesn't produce consciousness. It doesn't generate it. It reflects it. Everything you perceive, time, space, objects, colors, sounds, is a mental interpretation, an incomplete translation of a deeper field that you only access when you detach from the body. What you call reality is merely a projection filtered through your senses. And when you stop observing, that reality switches off. It doesn't disappear. It was never really there. It only existed because your consciousness sustained it. When you leave a room and turn off the light, you think everything remains there. But what remains are not shapes or textures, but fields of probability. Particles vibrating without fixed position, waiting to be seen before deciding where to be. There is no color in darkness. No smell without a nose. No sound without an ear. Matter is shapeless energy. And that energy only organizes itself when the mind steps in. Only then do the walls exist. The furniture appears, and your kitchen regains its familiar form. Consciousness is not a byproduct of neurons. It's the foundation that gives rise to them. It exists outside time and space because time and space are not absolute entities. They are cognitive tools used to organize information. When the body dies, those tools switch off. But consciousness doesn't, because it never depended on them. The self, you feel, the inner voice that has always accompanied you, does not vanish. It simply stops using this channel, this body, this story. It's not a belief. It's the logical consequence of what science still cannot explain. No matter how much we measure brain waves or map neural activity, no one has ever explained how a thought, an emotion, or a vivid memory emerges from matter, because what you are cannot be weighed, measured, or located. What you are is what observes, and that changes everything. When the body dies, the only thing that disappears is the biological interface. Like a broken television, the device stops working, but the signal continues, transmitting on a frequency your body can no longer receive. Consciousness, the invisible core within every thought, doesn't need your nervous system to continue because it was never produced by it. It was the origin. For decades, clinical cases have shown evidence that's impossible to ignore. People declared dead, with zero brain activity, describe in vivid, verifiable detail what happened around them. These are not hallucinations or dying dreams. They are measurable, consistent memories. And the most shocking part is that they occur at moments when biology has no way to produce them. These experiences shouldn't exist, but they do. Across cultures, ages, religions, and backgrounds, the pattern is clear. Consciousness survives. No brain mechanism can explain how someone hears conversations in another room while their body is clinically dead. No materialist theory can explain how Alzheimer's patients, disconnected from language for years, suddenly regain perfect lucidity before dying, recognize loved ones, speak coherently, and then pass away minutes later. If the brain was destroyed, what was speaking? What woke up? Everything points to one truth. The mind is not the brain. The mind is not a machine. It's a field, a channel, a dimension that doesn't end with physical death. It simply changes state. Like water turning into vapor, it stops being visible, but it never stops existing. This continuity isn't spiritual comfort. It's a fact suggested by quantum physics. radical experiments, and hundreds of near-death testimonies. This isn't about faith, it's about evidence. Traditional physics, obsessed with what can be measured, doesn't know what to do with this. Because if consciousness doesn't fade after death, if the observer continues to exist, then reality as we know it collapses. Time is not linear. Past, present, and future are not separate. They coexist simultaneously. Your death already exists. Your birth, too. You simply experience them sequentially, as if walking through scenes that are all happening at once. When you leave this body, you don't disappear. You just stop observing from this perspective. The movie doesn't end. You just change the camera angle. The illusion of linearity breaks once you realize that time is perception, not a constant. It doesn't move forward or backward. It's experienced. Like frames of a film passing before the light of a projector. Every moment already exists. What changes is your point of observation. Death, then, is not an end. It's a shift. A transition to another point of view where the body no longer limits you, where the brain no longer filters, and where consciousness encounters its purest state. Robert Lanza explained it clearly. Consciousness isn't generated. It's accessed. It exists latent, like a universal field that every living being tunes into differently. We are antennas receiving a signal that already exists. And when the device breaks, the signal doesn't stop. It simply ceases to be received from that point. There is no void, no end. Only transformation. This framework, called biocentrism, proposes an idea that dismantles modern science entirely. The universe doesn't create life. Life creates the universe. The observer is not part of the system. It's the origin of it. Because without someone to perceive, there is no reality, no objects, no universe, only probability awaiting observation, only formless potential until consciousness gives it shape, and that consciousness is not confined to your skull. It doesn't depend on a heartbeat. It exists beyond what we call matter, because matter itself isn't what we think. It's made of energy. And in the quantum realm, energy has no fixed form, position, or direction until it is observed. Nothing is real until you make it real through your attention. Nothing exists without someone to live it. Even deep anesthesia studies have shown that consciousness can remain active in states where science claims it should be suppressed. People with no measurable brain activity recall external events clearly, not dreams, but real moments. Words, sounds, exact details. That doesn't fit the materialist model, but it happens. And it happens too often to dismiss. For over a century, physicists like Max Planck have warned that consciousness is fundamental. Not matter, not the atom, not particles. Everything else, they said, is secondary. And yet we still treat the mind as a biochemical accident, reducing the human being to electrical impulses. That's why we still don't understand what we are, because what we are has never been matter, never the body. We are what observes, what chooses, what gives shape to the invisible. We are what remains, when everything visible collapses. If this made you question your existence, don't ignore it. Consciousness doesn't end with death. It simply changes form. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more. Here we question the unquestionable.